Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, I welcome back Mariano Gomez Bent, CTO of Mekorma, to talk about the experience of planning an ERP migration from Dynamics GP to Business Central. Mekorma is the sponsor of this episode, and this discussion comes at an important moment for the company as they're working through their own GP to BC migration. The company has a unique perspective on living with both ERPs, since their own business software works with both of them, and they therefore support customers and partners on both. They've also seen customers make the same move from on-premise to cloud ERP. Mariano tells me about the decisions that the Mekorma team has faced in planning their cloud ERP migration and how they got started with the typical challenges like data migration, security, and process visibility. Mekorma now have a partner to help them through the project. We discuss the selection process and the work they've done so far. And we discuss how the team plans to prepare users for the change, both from a leadership and a user perspective. All right. Well, Mariano, welcome back to the podcast. It's been a while, but it's always great to talk to you. How are you?
Doing well today. How you doing? Definitely enjoying a little bit of the Atlanta weather these days. We kind of have some cold coming through, but it's really nice and crisp out there, which is the way we like it down here.
Yeah, we're talking certainly still in the midst of winter, but and it's a time when I think warmer weather does sound kind of nice, but it's always great to catch up with you. I mean, we were just chatting off mic as we were getting started here. I mean, it's been more than 15 years that we've kind of known each other and done different things together. So it's always nice to kind of reconnect. I don't know the exact number of years, probably at least 15 though, I would say.
I would say at the very least 15, definitely. I remember our days as initial advisory to the work that you have been doing over the years, and also vetting a little bit of the content that used to be put online at the beginning, but really love what you've become over the years and how MS Dynamics World has become this magnet and center of all things Dynamics, right? And Microsoft for that matter. So great job. Congratulating you and your team, definitely.
Oh, thanks for that. I really can't overstate how much your support early on did help us as an advisor and doing some writing for us. And you, as I recall, you were really engaged in writing about ERP topics, writing about Dynamics GP at that time. I think that was a lot of your focus and working with a lot of GP clients back then, writing about development, as I recall. And your help was really instrumental as we kind of got this site off the ground. And it's been really positive relationship ever since. And here you are now. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the role you have now for anyone who doesn't know at Mekorma.
Currently, I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer here at Mekorma. So my functions divide pretty much into two elements. One is defining our product strategy, and the other one is obviously defining our technology strategy, internal and external, and merging and marrying those two things to deliver what I would call very solid products to the market. So as you know, we kind of pivoted over 5 years ago into the BC space and are definitely making roadway into it and definitely loving what we're doing in the BC space. So now one of my main goals now is to ensure that our products are actually delivered with the quality and the technology that customers have come to expect. So you will see more interesting things coming out from Mekorma in the next few years. And, I'll definitely be driving some of that strategy.
Yeah, that's great. And as I think back to the work that we've done collaborating with Mekorma, some of the technology advances, but also the partnerships and sort of, like you said, living in that Business Central world and really establishing yourselves there has been one of the really notable things I've observed about the company in the last few years, driven clearly by the technology advances that you've helped put together. And yeah, so I mean, when I think of Mekorma now, I think of a company really focused on Business Central, but that also has a really strong heritage with Dynamics GP and probably a lot of customers still running GP, right?
That is correct. There's one important thing to highlight from that. We come to the Business Central space with the know-how of accounts payable. So all the years of experience that we collected on the GP side of the house, we bring now to this market, hoping to obviously satisfy the needs of customers in the BC space. As you know, our focus is accounts payable. We basically address everything all the way from invoice capture with our partnership with Continia to payment automation, whether that's via check printing or traditional check printing methods, all the way to what I call payment as a service or remote payment services. So that's definitely our expertise. And we've developed that over the last 35 years. So I think we know pretty much what we're doing. What we want to do now is make sure that customers take advantage of the latest technology advancements on the Business Central platform, whether that's AI, whether that's electronic payments. That's kind of the expertise that we're bringing. And certainly partnering with our Continia is opening other roads and opportunities for us. So I'm pretty excited about what the future brings for us on this space. So, I think you've talked with some of my colleagues, whether that's Brendan in the past. I know you had a couple discussions with him, understanding the focus of what our market approach is. So that's in essence some of the things that we're working on diligently and streamlining for our partnership on our approach to the market for sure.
Yeah, great. I mean, one of the things I would say about the GP side in particular is that it's the older product of Microsoft's ERPs for SMB, but it's also sort of continuing to evolve in the sense of like the decisions around it and the support around it and customers planning around it, right? Of where they're going to go. And that's sort of the other dimension, as I understand it, that makes Mekorma really interesting is that much like a lot of your clients, much like kind of the ERP space in general, sort of that on-prem ERP to cloud ERP path is something that your team also has to navigate. Is that a good way to summarize it?
That is correct. I'm glad you touched on that because we're definitely in the process ourselves of migrating from on-prem GP to Business Central. Of course, we are taking advantage of our expertise that we've developed on the Business Central space over the last 5 years. But like any other customer that is running Dynamics GP, we face some of the same issues and concerns that the majority of the market faces, right? Like making sure we're working with the correct partner, make sure we do our due diligence around who we select as a partner. And we have the same concerns around data security and data migration or data migration and security. It depends. The order really doesn't matter, but that's kind of how we have to address it. Certainly the adoption of the new platform among our end users. So training becomes important. It's one of those things that is in the top of our mind. We also have to prepare like anybody else. We have to have an internal project team that's going to work with our partner to get things done. So, the same concerns that anybody else has as a customer, we have also internally, given our expertise on everything, we still have to deal with those same things. To add a little bit to that, we also have to contend with AI adoption. What are we going to do around AI and some of the things that we are faced now as SaaS customers to take advantage of some of the newer Microsoft technologies around Business Central.
Yeah, I mean, you've painted a complex and rich picture there, and that's that. And for everyone listening, we're going to dive into a few of those in a little more detail because I think there's probably no one better to hear from in terms of experiences with this kind of a technology change than a company that's sort of living it and that also is as connected, if that's the right word, and is sort of embedded in this world as Mekorma is. So yeah, let's get into a few of the things you touched on. Like just the decision to go to a cloud ERP, to go to Business Central in particular. What were some of the sort of goals, but maybe also some of the concerns of making that kind of move?
Let's address the goals first. And to address the goals, I have to paint the picture of our environment. So we embarked on our Azure migration some 15 years ago, and we have completed a successful migration of all our development platforms, all our operational platforms to the cloud, right? That included also migrating GP to the cloud. But what we understood early on is that we had all the technology resources in place, all the operational resources in place, but we still were sort of contending with this on-prem solution that really never responded well in the cloud. And maybe our perspective is slightly different, right? Because we are by nature a technology company. So we operate within those guardrails as an organization. And as an organization that works within the technology space, we're always looking to take advantage of the things that I think are going to make us successful down the road. And as I told you, part of my responsibility is also making sure that we are looking at those technology paradigms and responding to them accordingly, being the CTO of Mekorma. So we definitely had a need to respond to those market changes. First and foremost, we're delivering products on the Business Central platform. So we need to have a good understanding of what Business Central is as a product, and what better way to accomplish that more than migrating to the system itself and being users of the system. So that's one of the, ethos that is forcing us to do this migration. So we are first and foremost, a SaaS development company now, and now we have to actually consume the product that our products run on. So I think that's one of the major drivers that we are responding to. That is definitely getting us to make this migration to Business Central. So Jason, the second part that I want to respond to is your question around the concerns that we have as a company. And obviously, we have many of those. We've been running Dynamics GP for over 30 years now, and have gone through many upgrade cycles with Dynamics GP. But what we realize is that's not sustainable for a company that is limited in resources. And I'm talking about IT resources in general. I think we want to optimize the way we run our systems and obviously the way we distribute workload across our organization, our IT organization. So for us, it's important to adopt a product where those concerns are not as evident, right? Where we don't have to plan upgrade cycles, where we don't have to plan for technology, for the technical depth that comes along with running on-prem solutions. So that's the second big motivating factor that is driving us to Business Central. And, we want to eliminate those resource consumptions, whether that's technology resources or end user resources that go into maintaining an on-prem solution. So those are, in essence, some of the things that we have on our radar and that have always kept me up at nights. And we want to make sure we unload or offload that technical depth as well that we have. So I hope that's clarifying enough.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess the flip side of that is you have these concerns about sort of the system that you've been using for decades and where it's going in the future and reasons that you would be eager to move on, right, to something like Cloud ERP. But are there also concerns about moving to Cloud ERP? Are there, like, the other side of that is the concerns of making that move?
Yes. And as I said, like any other company out there, we still have the same concerns of adoption and making sure that our users are properly trained and can be responsive on the product from day one, right? So we are looking into an effective planning with a partner. And I think it's worth saying that we're working with ABC Consulting and Shannon Mullins and her team. I like the approach that they bring to the market and certainly the approach that they're going to use to get us into BC. I think also there's an important understanding that we are heavy users of Dynamics 365 CE and marketing, and that our ERP strategy needs to respond to how we use those products as well. And I think Shannon does a pretty good job overall in marrying those two technologies and helping us visualize what that's going to look like overall. There are some economies of scale that we're trying to gain as well. So subscription billing is super important for us as a software company. And I think we are looking at very good products that are going to help us with that move to complete our revenue cycle from end to end, all the way from opportunities to billing. Having that picture in mind and having how our sales operations happen internally, I think obeys very well to the strategy that we're going to employ in helping us get to the cloud and making an effective use of those cloud resources. So I think Business Central is the right pick for us, not only because it's part of the Microsoft ecosystem of products that we already use, but I think we, as I mentioned before, because we deliver solutions on that platform and nothing more than our end users understanding how our products work directly on Business Central by experiencing it themselves. So I think that completes the full picture of what our strategy is. and why we are also becoming, moving to a SaaS product as well. There are some things, other things that I could reference, and I think this is perhaps important to consider as well. We are obviously, to support GP, we have SQL Server licenses, we have virtual machine allocations that we've made for that. And that's also technical debt that I think we are paying off by moving to a cloud solution. So it's important to factor that in, because there is some return on investment by doing this migration to Business Central in offloading some of the resources that are no longer needed to operate an on-prem solution.
It almost sounds like, because your team obviously knows Business Central so well already, you've become so embedded into that ecosystem as a vendor. Did you actually have to take the time and actually look at your business requirements, look at your technical requirements, and really kind of evaluate whether, in fact, Business Central was the right solution for your needs?
Let me start by saying something that probably will allow listeners to discern a little bit why we do things the way we do them. So obviously we have our commercial development engineering team, which is totally separate from our internal IT and our own internal IT development team. So although we use the same development principles and approaches to development, we are two separate teams. So that's one thing that I want to make sure that our listeners have in mind, because we don't use or cannibalize our engineering resources to work on our internal projects. That said, we have the same set of concerns, as you mentioned before, that any other customer would have. So we go through a perfect evaluation of, what the partner market has to offer. So who we're going to work with. We went through, obviously, the contract negotiation phase. Now we're going to the project management and implementation phase. So I think that if you put that in context, this is, at least at those very core three elements, what any other customer would have to do to consider a migration to another ERP solution. Now, did we look at other products? Effectively, we did. And we certainly did look at Acumatica, for example. We like what they're doing in the space, but we realized that we wanted something that is a bit closer to and aligns more to our overall goals of being able to run our own products and see how our products behave internally, experienced by our own end users. And I have to say, we've been users of our products for forever, right? Ever since we produced the first version of Maker back in 1985 around, we've been actually using that product for ourselves internally. So just to experience what a customer would go through, it's actually valuable lessons learned for us. But also it allows our own end users to have input into how our products behave. Therefore, that creates a feedback loop mechanism to our engineering team and our products team to improve our products even more. Just because we use our own products and we understand, we look at it from the standpoint that any customer would look at it from. So we get that value and know-how from it too.
I'll just make a little callback here if anyone wants to know the history of Mekorma and how the company got started and how the products sort of evolved from the beginning. We have a podcast from about 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago now, from the company's founder, Aura, who talked a little bit about that history and how sort of she got into this space with the company and how it all began back then. But yeah, it really, like you said, though, it really is an interesting kind of series of sort of internal business requirements, but also it's like the ecosystem that you live in. The other question I really kind of wanted to get your view on was, because you live in this ERP industry, for lack of a better word, perhaps, everyone in this space has been hearing the pitch essentially of why to move to cloud ERP from the various, like the range of solution providers and partners out there in the world who provide upgrade services, right? And ERP services. So like you've heard it all, I've heard it all. How did sort of hearing it in general over the last few years, as opposed to actually having a project in front of you, did that change what you heard, or did that change sort of how you understood those kinds of ERP upgrade or cloud migration proposals?
That's a very interesting question, because I have delivered sessions about migrating from GP to BC, interestingly enough, at various different conferences. So I heard myself saying it, right? So that's actually funny to mention here. But more to from a serious perspective, I think over the years, I think it was clear for many of us who were in this business or who have been in this business for a long time that on-prem solutions had run a cycle, at least in Microsoft side, right? And let me say that's true in general for the industry. Any respectable ERP product out there is basically cloud enabled nowadays, or native cloud, if you want to call it somehow. So on-prem was going to run its course, whether we wanted it or not. Now, in particular, Dynamics GP has been a very solid product, and I think there's no disputing or debating that. But we understood very early on, even before the noise started to happen around, the end of life of Dynamics GP, that effectively we would have to commit someday to a cloud migration of some kind. Now, I have to admit as well, at the very beginning, we weren't too fond of Business Central. We looked at Business Central as this European product that was trying to do gap accounting, and it didn't do a pretty good job at it at the beginning. But I think over the years, after we started seeing the commitment that Microsoft had to Business Central or have to Business Central, because I don't think it's passed yet, and certainly the enhancements that the product has received over the years, we started to pay more and more attention to it. What was really key for us was, and I personally had the opportunity to work with the Business Central team in Denmark, and I started to understand more from internally when I used to be an MVP, the type of work that was going into the product to make it compelling for the North American market. And it started to move my needle more and more towards BC. And we started to actually communicate internally with our finance team on some of the aspects that would make it significantly compelling for us. As I said, the development aspect, yes, the engineering aspect was something we wanted to commit it to 5 years ago. But certainly now using it as a product for us internally started to become more appealing. So we definitely, I think the switch really lit up for us, I would say, at the beginning of last year. And that's when we started really formulating a migration strategy that will help us achieve our goals as an organization. So that's sort of in summary what we set out to do and how we responded to that noise. So it was good hearing it from others, but also it made more of a case and more sense to us when we started diving into it ourselves, both from an engineering standpoint, but looking at it more as a substitute for our current financial system, which is Dynamics GP.
Yeah. I know you're not sort of fully through the process. Like you said, I mean, you've selected a partner and you're doing some of the work now, but are there any lessons from what you've done so far, some of the challenges you faced or the choices you've made that you could share that you think would be helpful to others?
I would say that first and foremost, I've been in this ERP business for over 30 years myself, and I've completed just about over 100 plus implementations of ERPs in those 30 years. And I think that the process is no different than what I would have done 5, 10 years ago, or even, 2 years ago, if you would have asked me to do something like that for somebody or some other customer 2 years ago. It's important to have a clear set of goals. I think that drives a lot of your implementation requirements. It's important to understand the foundations of what you want to achieve. So for us, it was very key that one of the biggest problems that we want to resolve is subscription billing, right? We are in a market now where subscription dominates, and that's one of the key aspects that we wanted to resolve. And what was very clear to us is that we also wanted to have an end-to-end operational streamline in our sales process. So all the way from marketing, all the way to our cash collection process. That had to be extremely streamlined for us to do any migration, because otherwise we might as well stay with what we have, right? And continue cultivating that maybe at least through 2031, which is kind of a Microsoft deadline, right? But at the same time, we knew that in order for us to do this, and even given our expertise in ERP, we didn't want to do this by ourselves, right? It's something that I think a lot of customers fall into, where they believe that they can do these type of implementations by themselves. But let me tell you something, even as an experienced company that lives in the ERP market, we knew we wanted to have a partner that could guide us through this process, understand the pitfalls that we could run into, although we ourselves understand those pitfalls. But it's more like, sanity check and keep us away from committing those mistakes. So one thing that I do encourage anybody listening to this, especially customers, is make sure you do a complete due diligence on your partner. You want to have a partner that has done this, that has a proven track record, and that has positive reviews and experience from their customers. So not because we are industry friends with ABC Consulting, it did not mean that we didn't do our due diligence. And as much as I love Shannon and respect her, is something that I had to do for our company before we did our selection process. And, I encourage everybody to do the same. And finally, one thing that was super key for us is in the contract negotiation process is that we had fixed price amount on our implementation. Some people or some companies swear by hourly rates. For us, it was important to have clarity and visibility on what this project would cost us as a whole and how many resources we needed. And know that if there was any slippage in the scope, that, there would be ways to resolve that without necessarily having to break the bank. So it was super important to us to do that diligence. And now that we are past the contract negotiation phase, I think it's also very important to have a very clear milestones in your project planning process and what the deliverables will be at the end of each milestone. So as I said, I don't know that this is any different from what I would have done, 10, 15 years ago. Obviously, the elements are different because we're talking here about cloud implementation, but the result is pretty much aligned with standard contract negotiation and project management principles that I've handled and followed for the past 30 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another thing that is going to be very different once you're through this is the kind of responsibilities that individual system users would have in a brand new BC system versus what they would have had, a decade or 2 decades ago in a GP system. They're doing different tasks. They're responsible for different work. Different things are automated that weren't before. All that's, I assume, going to change. And that's maybe one of the final things I wanted to talk to you about today, which was how you sort of set a tone for what you see people in the organization and the roles they fulfill needing to do to be trained, to be prepared for a go live that you'll be sort of working toward.
Yeah, I want to say, though, that I'll preface my response with, we have a little bit of an unfair advantage, right? As I said, we've been in this industry for 30 years and our users are super experienced users. Nonetheless, adoption is critical to us. So adoption means a lot of things to a lot of people, but for me in particular means that we are taking full advantage of the capabilities of the system, right? Training is a big component of that, but it's more about usage and usability of every aspect of the system. So we will be looking hard at making sure that our teams are extremely prepared before we actually go live. That means that we will have outlined what responsibilities will be, what the new role profiles will be, and certainly what tasks. We're going to look at a task one by one and figure out what tasks can be automated, what tasks will remain automated, or what tasks we might have to continue to do manually. I don't know that in that sense we are doing anything different. I think to me it's all about optimizing resources everywhere, whether that's human resources or technology resources. But training will play a fundamental role. And I think we have, for all intents and purposes, a good partner we can rely on. But I also know, and I'm pretty confident in the skills that our users bring to the table as well to make things happen. One thing I will very much highlight here is that we have internal champions for this implementation. And I think this is where implementations tend to go sour, when you don't have enough buy-in or enough championship being promoted and pushed by your own management team. So we have internal champions on our management team that are effectively wanting and seeing that this is going to happen for our users. It starts for me, obviously, from being the CTO of the organization, but also our CFO and certainly our leadership team in general is completely vested into this and making sure that we are going to be successful at the end of the day. And, I think we cannot ask for anything more being, the type of company we are and the type of resources we bring to the table. So, in that sense, we have a little bit of an unfair advantage, as I said, but for any other organization that is considering a path to the cloud, I think it's important to start establishing who are those champions, who are those leaders that are going to drive a proper implementation process. And it's important, obviously, to have those people because decisions need to be made. And the quicker you clear those decisions, the better off you'll be as an organization. It will make your partner's life a lot easier, your end user's life a lot easier. And certainly the results will be or speak for themselves at the end of the day.
I think, like you said, you definitely, as an organization, have some of those built-in advantages. But I think by the same token, there's really something that others who don't live in this world every day can really learn from that, right? Can learn how you operate and maybe some of the decisions that you're making, like you're sharing today. And maybe we can learn more from it in the future too. I mean, I know that you're on this journey and there's probably, you've raised some super interesting topics that could be their own podcast or presentation or something. So I hope we do get a chance to check back in with you or other members of the Mekorma team as you go on this journey and sort of hear more about the experience. But yeah, maybe we should wrap it up there in the interest of time. But yeah, thanks so much for sharing a bit today. Anything else you wanted to add?
First and foremost, thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate our conversations as always. And looking forward to see you in South San Padre Island, right?
That's right.
I think you're going to be there for Partner Vibe. And this is my shameless plug for the event. The only one thing I want to leave with our listeners is, if you're going to embark on cloud migration, this is the right time to look at your processes, evaluate whether those processes are efficient, and start to look for opportunities to optimize going forward. It has to worth your time to move to the cloud. I don't necessarily believe in migrating to the cloud for the sake of migrating to the cloud and say you are a cloud-based organization. It has to worth your time and certainly the resources and money you're going to pour into this. So look for opportunities to optimize and automate is the name of the game at this point.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I will see you at South Padre Island. It's a good plug for that event. It should be great. And yeah, thanks again for sharing all this with us, Mariano. Really, really appreciate it. And just, it's always fun catching up with you a bit.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again for joining us. And this message from Mekorma. If you want to learn more about Mekorma, they have other educational materials around AP best practices and GP to BC migrations all over on MS Dynamics World. We'll put a link in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.